Jerry, I'm just going to go through some of the basic stuff first, but because I don't think a lot of people understand what homestead exemption is. What is that?
Well, basically, it's something the legislature has entitled people who own their homes, reside in it as their permanent resident, and allows them to have a deduction up to $50,000. So that allows them, but the thing that really saves homeowners is not just the $50,000 deduction, is it caps the amount of increase their property can go up. Maximum 3%, minimum the consumer price index, which last year was 0.7 of a point. So what that does is it keeps their assessed value a lot lower than the market rate as they live in the house longer. And sometimes that deferred amount can be hundreds of thousands of dollars less value that they don't have to pay taxes on. So there's a real value of having homesteads, and that's why sometimes people will go out of their way to keep that homestead when they're not entitled to it.
Do you find that happens a lot?
Well, we do see quite a few cases. Now, it's hard to prove intent because, again, people will say, I just didn't know I was supposed to come in. A lot of times they've acquired the property through a death, but they haven't gone through probate. They've been living in the house with the with the relative before they deceased, and so they just think everything continues the way it is. And then they're shocked when they find out that they've been getting the benefit of their deceased relative, and now they have to pay back taxes.
And I guess that's what people would understand. They go, well, the house was homestead exemption. It's in my family. I'm going to be the owner, but it's in probate. So why does that matter?
Well, what matters is when a deed changes ownership, then the assessed value goes back up to the market value. So the reality is if you keep it under the old homestead, then you're not paying the full taxes. And what people don't want to do is go, record a new deed, and now the market value goes back up to the top of what it is. They may get the $50,000 homestead exemption they're entitled to, but they're not going to get the amount of portability that has been there with the deceased relative.
Since you took office as property appraiser, this has been one of your goals, I know, to really crack down on this. What's happened since your time in office?
Staff has been very successful. We also increased, we added 2 additional people in that Department of Homestead Noncompliance. One of those staff members, the supervisor, is actually is a law enforcement officer that can actually go out and get information from other police departments and other states. So that helps us in the investigative part. But what we really focused on was we knew in talking to other property appraisers that our numbers as far as the amount of liens and how much was so much less than the other counties that we were suspect that a lot of people were taking advantage of it.
And you did find that was the case?
We did find that, and we still believe there's a lot out there because, again, of the amount of money that people are saving by non-compliance. A lot of people continue to do it, and so we've actually hired an outside company to do data research. That will cost the taxing districts a little money on the ones we find, initially, but the future money will go to the taxing districts. About 30% is what they will get as a finder's fee of the ones we find, but they'll find the ones we can't find. They'll research all the states where other people may have homesteads, where people have died outside the state, and we're predicting probably another anywhere from 1,900 to 2,000 additional taxpayers that are probably in non-compliance.
And that's what I was going to have you. Last year at this time, there were like 237, I think, that you have found. This year, how many have you found?
We found over 600, just over about 601 for the year. That equates to about $3.1 million in back taxes. And you got to understand also, it's not a matter of just paying their back taxes. They have to pay a 50% penalty, and then they have to pay 15% interest for every year that they've done this, and we can go back up to 10 years. We've seen liens go from small amounts within $100 to over $60,000 and $70,000 in back liens.
Have they been paying them?
They have been paying them. Of the money that we've already liened so far, more than half of it's been paid. People do work out payment plans sometimes with the tax collector. Many times they know they have to get it paid because their mortgage company wants it paid. And then also if they intend to sell the house, they're unsuccessful in selling their house if they have that lien on there.
So what's next? The company that you've contracted with, we're really going to start seeing the payoff this year.
Yes, we are. In fact, we think we'll get our first files here in the 1st of February. Although we had 3.1 million last year, our goal is with this company doing additional data research of going over $5 million in back liens this year.
And I guess on the negative end of this, people would say, gee, you're just being like the tax man. Why do this? Do we really need this, and does it help?
Well, I think it does two things. One is I think people ought to get homestead exemptions that are entitled to it. When someone gets it and they're not entitled to it, it means everybody else is subsidizing them. It means basically they're not paying their full share. Sometimes that may mean that, you know, taxes have to go up or less services are provided. The reality that we face is we want everyone to pay their fair share. We want everyone who's entitled to a homestead exemption to get it. But those not entitled to those exemptions, we think they're cheating the rest of us.
And as you mentioned, there may be cases that will be prosecuted, but why not prosecute everyone?
Because in many cases, it's hard to prove intent. And that's what a state attorney looks for, is can you prove it? They're happy that we're getting the money back, but can you prove that they actually weren't ignorant to the law? That doesn't excuse them from the law, but again, that's hard to prove. We know out of the 600 cases, we have at least one that we will turn over to state attorney because again, the people who took possession of the house signed an affidavit that the relative was still alive. So with that case, that one we think we can prove intent. We did have another case that we thought we could prove, but they were outside the statute of limitations. So that one was too far gone. Even though we were able to go back 10 years on their taxes, we weren't able to go back because, again, the statute of limitations had already exceeded.
And if people can't pay, what do you do?
Well, basically, understand this is not, in most cases, their primary house. This is, in most cases, a secondary house. But I will say, we'll establish the lien. Normally, they'll get with the tax collector, set up a payment schedule. We have not found anyone not to work with the tax collector in setting up some kind of payment schedule, or as many of them have done, has paid it all off right there as soon as they've gotten the lien.
Very good. Anything I didn't ask you that you think might be important to get across?
One key thing is, for those that are entitled to their homestead exemption, the deadline is March 1st this year. So all they have to do is call our office at 630-2020, and we can show them how to get the application from our website, or we'll mail them an application.